France has charged Telegram boss Pavel Durov with several violations relating to the messaging app. The probe looks into what prosecutors call an organized crime and the platform's alleged complicity. The charges against him include distribution of child sexual abuse material, drug trafficking, and fraud. 39-year-old Durov is also being accused of refusing to cooperate with law enforcement. He is banned from leaving France and has been granted conditional release against a bail of 5 million euros. He must report to a police station twice a week. Durov's lawyer says it's absurd to think that a head of a social network can be involved in criminal acts and insists the company complies with EU rules. Experts say being placed under formal investigation in France doesn't necessarily lead to a criminal trial, but that there is enough evidence to proceed with a probe. Such investigations can take years before being sent to trial or being shelved. Durov holds dual French and UAE citizenship, and he was born in Russia. French President Emmanuel Macron earlier said the arrest wasn't politically motivated, though Moscow believes otherwise.
Запад, видимо, не увидел главного, что конкретные действия Парижа по задержанию, а теперь я не видела этой информации, видимо, она только что пришла, вы говорите, информация об аресте была, а теперь и аресте основателя Telegram Павла Дурова вызвало шок во всем мире. Эта история не только про реакцию России. Мы отреагировали так, как и обязаны были отреагировать российские дипломаты в данном случае, когда речь шла о задержании российского гражданина.
Telegram says it has more than 900 million active users across the globe. It's popular in India, Russia, elsewhere in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Its draw, only one-to-one conversations can be encrypted, and if users choose that option. One expert says the very public arrest may well be a calculated move designed to attract attention and intimidate other big tech firms, but that it could be challenging to hold one single person guilty.
For more insight, let's speak now with Dr. Nasha Baffin. She's a senior lecturer at the Department of Politics, Media, and Philosophy at La Trobe University. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Baffin. Firstly, I just want to get your reaction to Durov's indictment. I mean, do you think his case will effectively send a strong message against privacy-minded users like drug dealers, terrorists, child abusers? And could it lead to significant changes when it comes to curbing criminal activities on similar platforms?
Julie, Arnold, good to speak to you. I think Telegram occupies a very strange place in the world of social messaging apps, and a very strange place in Russia in particular. Arnold, you mentioned the popularity of Telegram in countries like India, Russia, Ukraine, and Iran, and the Middle East. Within Russia itself, it's a primary communication channel by both dissenters, so people who are against the regime of Vladimir Putin, but it's also used by the Russian military, and it's also used by the Kremlin. So I think the impact of his arrest will be far-reaching within Russia, but also among the users of Telegram, who tend to be people within these countries who are distrustful of Western social media apps, and for whom the privacy of the messaging service is a key draw. Now, already we're seeing French media reports saying that the authorities in France are going to try and get some unencrypting, or try to find some way to see those messages on Telegram, and that's going to be a hit to Telegram's future popularity among among investors, and it's going to impact on Telegram's ability to raise funds. So the financial viability of the app is going to take a hit. But Julie, as well, you correctly mentioned that these are just preliminary charges, and so the case could go on for a bit of a long while. I understand that because of these preliminary charges, it's basically just a sign to not just Durov, but also the other executives with Telegram, that basically the authorities are keeping an eye on them. And yes, he has been released. He can't, leave the country. But it's an indication that the French authorities believe there's sufficient evidence there to charge him with a lot of these crimes.
So right now, Dr. Baffin, this fear, among Telegram users that the app may be shut down or affected in some way by Durov's case. that seems to be a bit of a stretch in the near term. But how might the entire situation play out for Telegram and its 900 million users in the longer term? Is there a way of, predicting what might happen?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because as we've discussed, the appeal of Telegram is its privacy. That's why it was trying to set itself apart when Durov sort of founded it. That was its selling point. Its selling point was we're going to prevent the authorities and anyone from looking at your communications. Now, with this move by the French authorities, it's basically sending a warning to people who might look at the privacy appeals on Telegram as a way to sort of get around some of the nefarious or not completely legal activities that that the users of the app might use to communicate with. But the impact of that obviously is going to, it's going to send a signal to not just the elements of criminality among its user base. One of the users famously was, Islamic State in the Middle East to try and avoid, monitoring by the West. But it's not only going to have an impact on the people who see it as a safe place to communicate without the eyes of the authorities, but one big issue, I guess, is that in countries like Russia, where the app is used among people who have more of a pro-democratic slant, with Vladimir Putin, cracking down on independent media outlets, banning Western social media platforms and messaging apps, it's going to have an impact in those types of countries as well. The issue with the Russian military and the Kremlin using it, Telegram is actually one of the communication channels used in combat, and so that, I guess, suggests that perhaps niche apps or individually developed, communication channels need to be looked at by governments throughout the world, unless you're going to get these sort of multinational, international messaging platforms under control according to the law, so that criminal elements are not their actions are not facilitated through the use of these messaging platforms.
And Doctor, we have about a minute left in the clock, but briefly, Durov's case highlights the debate over the extent of responsibility that tech bosses should have for the content on their platform. To what extent do you think they should be held accountable? What would constitute a fair level of responsibility?
I think that Telegram's statement that its executives or its operators should not be held liable for the criminal acts that are facilitated, I think people are going to look at that and roll their eyes. I think they're going to say, well, that argument has not prevented other messaging and social media apps, such as Facebook, from having to face the recriminations for things like data breaches and so on. It's a bit of a facetious argument, and I'm sure the French authorities are going to look at that and say, if you're going to be the means by which criminal acts take place, then you do have to be held accountable. And as you say, it is an incredibly difficult thing to do, to balance the rights of free speech with society's rights in being free of actions that will cause harm to its citizens.
All right, Dr. Bafa and I struggle with this one. Is Telegram a good guy or a bad guy? Both free speech advocates and authoritarian governments, have come to Durov's defense. So what exactly is Telegram?
Yeah, Telegram is, I think, we just have to look at the fact that it's the messaging app of choice for terrorism, advocates of terrorism like Islamic State, and the messaging app of choice for a authoritarian regime like Putin. I guess they're not really. That's not good PR for Telegram. It doesn't speak to the quality, I guess, of its users. But similarly, there are a lot of users, 900 million of them, who are not members of a terrorist organization, or who are not members of the Kremlin, or who are not advocates of Putin's authoritarian regime. And so, I think what we really, really need to look at is a way to balance the rights of people to communicate without authorities looking into their activities. But, it might be controversial, but we do need to get these apps, if there are criminal elements, to cooperate with law enforcement, where there is a good chance of pinning that down.
I understand. And why would you think Russia is suddenly so keen to claim ownership of Durov? This was the country that forced him to sell his company and leave, in 2014.
There is, I think, the key the key thing to this question is that it's the platform that is used by the Kremlin. In 2018, they actually tried to ban it in Russia and unsuccessfully. I think Durov also does actually hold Russian citizenship, in addition to, Julie mentioned his UAE and his French citizenship. He's still a Russian citizen as well. So on the one hand, Russia has to seem to be protecting its citizens, but it's also putting forward this weird argument that this shows the hypocrisy of the West in terms of freedom of speech. But Russia's not really kind of the country that to be educating, other countries on the issue of freedom of speech, because of the Kremlin's long history of cracking down on pro-democracy voices and its, the banning of non-Russian developed social media platforms. So I think that both the fact that the Kremlin and the military use Telegram and the fact that Durov does still hold Russian citizenship are both, reasons for the Kremlin to come out and to be really vocal against his arrest by the French authorities.
All right, Dr. Boffin, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much for your insight this morning. Dr. Nasha Boffin, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Politics, Media and Philosophy, La Trobe University.